This video recording is for a demonstration of pivot tables. This will be using Microsoft Excel version 2010. Pivot tables are a very powerful tool for a data analysis, particularly when you're dealing with a large volume of data. Using pivot tables, you can quickly sift through this information quickly, and you can display the information in a variety of ways that are of particular interest to you or to policymakers that you report to. In the case of this information here, we have literally hundreds of rows of information relating to sales. So as I scroll down here, you can get a sense of the volume of information we're going to be analyzing using the pivot table. And at the top we have columns for the different fields in the data for the date, region, sales representative, item being sold, how many units are sold, the unit cost, and the grand total for each sale. When you look at the volume of information here, you can see that the difficulty that we would have in trying to sort through this information, either put it in order by item or representative, or do basic filtering of the information in this sort of a format. Using pivot tables, however, we'll be able to get a quick sense of how this information compiles, and we'll be able to do it quickly. In order to build a pivot table, you just need to have your cursor somewhere within the large table of information that you're going to analyze. You'll notice down here at the bottom I have a single tab open right now labeled as Data. So with our cursor located somewhere in this information, you come up to the Insert tab and select Pivot Table. And watch what happens here on the screen. Excel will automatically outline the entire range of data for you. You can see this dashed line around the information, and it's creating a default selection here indicating that it's going to create a new tab down here at the bottom and build the pivot table in a new tab, or I should say in a new worksheet. You can also create the pivot table in the existing worksheet, but we will not choose that option for this illustration. At this point, if I wanted to, I could select a smaller section of this table, but for purposes of this analysis, we want to do an evaluation of all of the rows that are in the table. Once I've made my decision or selection, I can go ahead and just click the OK button, and watch what happens over here to the left. What we have is a new region where we can construct our pivot table, and over here to the right we have a listing of all the fields that are listed here in the original data tab. All of these column headings that are available here are now listing over here on the left, and you'll notice that a new sheet was created down here at the bottom, separate from the original data, where we can construct our pivot table. Down here in the lower right hand corner, you can see where we can organize the information into column labels and row labels. And here in this section in the lower right hand corner is where we're going to be doing our summarizing of the data. So to get started here with our analysis, what I'm going to do is take the total field. We'll start with that, the total column. I'm going to left click and hold this down with my left mouse button, and I'm going to drag it down here into the values section of the pivot table, and watch what happens over to the left hand side of the screen. By pulling this down into the values area, I've very quickly summarized or totaled all of the data in this total column right here. So this number here represents a total of all of that information from all of those rows. Let me go ahead and just format this into the currency format. I'll take the pennies out. And so we have a total of $564,454. Now, to make it a little bit more interesting in our analysis, what I can do is take the item left click on it and drag it over here to the row labels. And again, watch to the left what happens with our data summary. Here you can see that very quickly we've broken down that total, that $564,000, and separated it out by the item, the sale item that is listed over here in column D. Now, to continue with our analysis, to make it even more interesting, what I can do is take the region and pull that down here also to the row labels. I can put it, you'll notice, either above item, you see that small bar there above the item, or if I pull it down a little bit, it'll appear after that, below item. Let's put it above item so it's listed first in the rows. If I let go of it, you'll notice that we've got the region, then the item, then the total. Again, the subtotal coming to the grand total down here at the bottom. I can rearrange these quickly just by clicking with my left mouse button and holding it and moving item to the top, and it reorganizes this for us. You'll notice also that we get a subtotal by item in addition to the grand total as we move our information or adjust our analysis of the information. And we can also get a subtotals by region along with the grand total. To make it a little bit easier to analyze our information in summary, what I can also do is take the region here and move it up to the column label. And this format sort of makes it a little bit easier to look in columns for region and in rows for binder. And again, we can kind of do a side-by-side analysis of sales for a particular item across various regions. Again, we have flexibility to change the item to be in the column heading or and vice versa. Another very interesting feature about pivot tables is that if I double click on any one of these numbers where there's an intersection, it will open up another sheet down here at the bottom that will list the detail behind this $46,145 sale total. So we'll do that right now. You'll notice that down here a new tab will open, and I can see the entire detail just of that one section of the pivot table. Go ahead and delete this sheet once I've looked at the detail. I don't have to keep it. I can delete it. And I can move on to look at detail behind this figure. Again, all of this here will total to the intersection right here. Again, I'll discard this new sheet since I don't need it anymore once I've looked at the detail. Another option we have in addition to looking at the detail behind each one of these intersection elements is that I can filter this data. Let's say, for example, that we just want to look at 2 regions instead of all 3. I can deselect Ontario and look at a smaller set of the total data just with those 2 regions, again, for all of these items. Or I might want to decide here that I just want to compare. I'll deselect all and say I want to just compare pens and pencils to compare sales for those. If I want to go back and return to so that I can see all of the data again, if I click on any of these filter buttons, I can either select the Select All button, or I can clear the filter. Do that over here on the item. I click down here again, I can clear the filter, and all of the data returns. A nice feature of Excel 2010 also is that if we assume that we have, instead of just these 5 items listed here, let's say we had dozens or even hundreds of different items possible listed here in the rows. When you click on this down arrow, you can begin to type, and it will a description, and it will begin to filter the values with anything that contains the text pen in it. And again, I can clear the filter. Same thing for the columns. Again, if you start to type something, has the letters AR in it, it will filter it down to Ontario for me. Select all again, or again clear filter, and we're back to our full data set again. Notice that if you move anywhere outside of the pivot table, if you select this cell over here, that all of this interface having to do with the pivot table field list and where you do your analysis of the summary information will disappear. So if I click here, that space over here to the right goes away. But if you want to get it back, you just have to click anywhere within the pivot table, and this interface will return over to the right-hand side of your screen. Another very nice feature of pivot tables is that you can rapidly graph this information. Again, with your cursor on any one of the cells in the pivot table, if you come up to the Insert tab and select any one of these graph types, let's do this one, we'll do a 3D graph here. I can click here and it quickly will create a graph for me of this information. Again, I can filter this information either in the graph here or over here on the pivot table, and everything will quickly and dynamically change. I want to filter this down just to look at these items here. Again, rapid analysis and change of your information here. I can quickly change the type of graph by right-clicking anywhere in the graph, coming down to change chart type, and let's say we want to look at just a basic bar graph where the bars run horizontally. I can change this information quickly to that format, and there you go. Again, you can go ahead and click on the graph on the edge of it here and delete it, and then very quickly insert a graph again if you wish to. It's very easy to move it and to resize it. You may also want to format how the page will print. If you go to Print Preview, you can go to Page Setup and say that you want it to fit in landscape mode to 1 page wide and by 1 page tall. The computer will automatically readjust it. I can come down here to show the margins, and I can even adjust margins graphically so that now when I print this out, it will fit to a single page. Come back to the Home tab, and I might decide that this analysis, which is by region and then by item, is one that I want to save, but I might want to create a separate presentation later using a different analysis. I can come down to the sheet label down here. If I right click on it and I rename it, I might call this something like Item by Region. Now I can come back to my original data and start a separate analysis. Alright, so here we'll just insert another pivot table. Again, it automatically selects everything that's continuous here, all the way down to the very bottom of the spreadsheet, as indicated by the flashing dotted line. I want to create a new worksheet, as we did last time. Click OK. Let's say this time we want to look at things grouped by date categories. So if I take the date field and drag it over here to the row labels, we see that we get a lot of information in terms of the number of rows, because there are so many separate dates of transactions listed here. One nice feature about Excel and pivot tables, if I right click on this date column header here, I can group the date, the dates. I'll deselect months and I'll go with years and quarters. Hit OK. And we know that we can see that quickly we've got the information organized. I'll take the total column or data element and drag it down to the summary field or the total field. And now we've got a breakdown by years and quarter. I might want to put the date here. So now I've got years and quarter in a nice format that's easy to follow. Again, I can format this to be currency. Take the pennies out. And again, we have a rapid analysis separate from the original, which was sales by region and item. Now we're looking at sales by year and quarter. Again, if I wish, I can quickly reorganize it. Maybe I want the years in the columns and the quarters in the rows. As with before, I'm going to insert a graph quickly. Resize it. Change the type. Come up to Print Preview. Set it so that it'll, oops, I had the graph selected here, so when I hit Print Preview, it just showed the graph. Let me come back over here and just get back into the spreadsheet. Now we hit Print Preview, Page Setup. I want it to fit. I want to see the margins. Make sure those are on. Readjust this. Come back over to the Home tab once I've looked at the preview. I should mention that if you don't have the Print Preview button selected or built into your Excel presentation on your computer, don't worry. You can come over to the File menu and then say Print, and it'll do a Print Preview from there as well. Let me come back to the Home tab. I can rename this sheet to call it Year by Quarter. Again, as with before, we can filter it if we want to, either from the graph or over here in the data. I can quickly clear the filters for both the rows and the columns. So again, we've been able to move from a huge volume of information presented in this format to saved analysis in a format that is of interest to us or policymakers who want to consume this reporting that you've created. I should mention also that if you want to, rather than do summaries of information like numbers, you can also count the data or get an average of the data, or the minimum or the maximum of this information. So here we've done something very typical with financial information, is that we're looking at total summary amounts. But if I wanted to get a count, let's say that this, rather than financial information, this had to do with lists of students in classes, something along those lines. Instead of financial or cumulative information, we can double click on this field here where it says sum of total and change it from sum to count, or average, minimum, maximum, that sort of thing. So if I say count, I would change it from wouldn't want it to be a currency, it would just be a number. And this is the number of transactions that we're dealing with here. Again, if I want to go back to the total, I can sum it again and return to that. So a lot of flexibility in terms of how you use the summary section down here in the lower right-hand corner. Hopefully this demonstration helps to illustrate the power of pivot tables and their ability or capacity to rapidly help you do an analysis of a lot of information. In addition to the sort of data that you're seeing here in this example, we could also do an analysis of things like checkbook information that you download from your bank, or in the case of folks who work here in the budget office at Fresno State, this could be an extract from the PeopleSoft budget system, where you may have hundreds or thousands of lines of information that you can quickly organize into pivot tables to look at trending over time. And that's pretty much it, pivot tables in a nutshell.